Hey folks, David Stewart here. You guys bought a book yet? You could just look these up on Amazon, buy them, enjoy them, or you can get them on my Patreon. Down below, you get a free book every month, or you can just buy the books on Patreon, and you get a free book for joining my mailing list, dvspress.com/list. Nintendo Switch 2 is coming out. New console. That's an evergreen statement. You could be watching a video in 10 years. Yeah, there's a new console coming out. Right now, it's the Nintendo Switch 2. Should you buy one? The answer is yes. I'm going to give you 10 reasons why you should buy the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm not going to do the reverse order thing, like 10 counting down to 1. I have a low IQ, and I would just get really mixed up doing that. So we're just going to go in order, and that way I won't get confused. So number 1 is it's the Nintendo Switch, but better in every way. So if you like the Nintendo Switch, you like the functionality of the Nintendo Switch, you like being able to take it on the go, plug it into the TV, detach the Joy-Cons, you have all of that, but better. Bigger screen, higher resolution, higher potential refresh rate and frame rate for your games, HDR output, better attachment of the Joy-Cons, bigger sticks on the Joy-Cons, so more comfortable, but all the same basic functions. You could attach a camera, you can stream with it now, there's voice chat, all the stuff you expect from the Nintendo Switch, just better. That's a great reason to buy it. You already know what you're going to get. It's already going to be something you like, just a better version of something that you like. Number 2 is that the Nintendo Switch 2 will have Nintendo games. These are system sellers. You cannot play Nintendo games off of their respective platforms. Now, you could play older Nintendo games on a Nintendo Switch, right? You could play old Super Nintendo games, but you can't buy old Nintendo-produced games on anything other than a Nintendo system. So if you want to play Nintendo games, then you got to buy a Nintendo system. The Nintendo Switch 2 will be the place for you to play Nintendo first-party games for the next 8 years, and generally those first-party games are very well respected and very good. Nintendo is a developer that emphasizes fun and emphasizes gameplay, and I would say artistic style in most cases over graphical fidelity, and the meta that exists in the industry about having the highest fidelity graphics using Unreal Engine 5, the particle effects, like that's not what Nintendo emphasizes. Nintendo games are about fun. When you plug in Mario Kart, it's about having a lot of fun racing, or Smash Bros, or the newest Nintendo game, and you're going to be able to do that on the Nintendo Switch 2. That's the place where you're going to get to do it. So a lot of the value for a Nintendo console is going to come from those first-party titles, which are always exclusive. Number 3 is the backwards compatibility of the Nintendo Switch 2. That gives you a huge game catalog at launch. You have all the Nintendo Switch 2, or all of the Nintendo Switch 2 games, plus most of the Nintendo Switch games. And I think the compatibility will improve with time. It is a software layer that's doing the backwards compatibility for the Nintendo Switch games, but Nintendo has historically been really good about backward compatibility. The Wii U with the Wii was really good compatibility. The 3DS and the DS, the Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, and original Game Boy games. Even the DS would play Game Boy Advance games. So historically, they've been really good about backwards compatibility. The Wii U can actually play GameCube games as well. It just can't read the discs. So if you can get the ROMs onto the system, you can play GameCube games on your Wii U, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. So I think that backwards compatibility will get even better. What that means is, besides having a huge back catalog of games, if you were one of the people that didn't buy a Nintendo Switch, well, you could buy a Switch 2, and then you can play this huge back catalog of games you didn't play, including some really amazing first-party titles that have been released over the last 7 or 8 years that are definitely worth playing. A lot of Wii U titles actually sold the Nintendo Switch, including Breath of the Wild, which was a Nintendo Wii U game originally, as well as like Donkey Kong, Tropical Freeze. There's a bunch of them. So Mario Kart 8 was a Wii U game. So you can go play all of those right at release. You don't need to have this huge amount of Nintendo Switch 2 games right at release for you to have fun with the console. And if you already have a lot of Nintendo Switch 2 games, that means that when you take your console with you on the go, you're hitting the train, you can bring your favorite Nintendo Switch games with you. You don't have to bring, and you don't have to choose. You don't have to bring a Switch and a Switch 2 when you're on some kind of long trip. You can just bring your Nintendo Switch 2 and it's going to play all of the games. Number 4 is third-party games. This was not a big selling point for Nintendo in generations past, like 20 years ago, but it is a big selling point for the Nintendo Switch 1, and I think it will be for the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. Not just new third-party games that they've announced. They've announced a new FromSoft game, Duskbloods, and then Final Fantasy VII Remake, which was a pretty good game and very graphically beautiful game, I think, is going to come to the Nintendo Switch 2. That's great. But you also have a huge catalog of third-party games that were released for the Nintendo Switch. And that's because of the very big installed user base. When there's a really big installed user base, third-party developers have a really strong incentive to bring whatever software they can onto that platform and to figure out how to make it work, even if the hardware is underpowered or if it's a little weird. They have a strong motivation to do that, including some things that people considered impossible ports, like Witcher 3. Witcher 3 is playable on the Nintendo Switch, which is kind of amazing when you think about the power of the original Nintendo Switch compared to the fact that Witcher 3 actually gave the bigger home console hardware a much harder time when it was released. So you have Witcher 3 for Nintendo Switch. You have Elder Scrolls V you can buy for the Nintendo Switch, and I think you're going to see a lot of that with the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. Not just new third-party games that are releasing with the system, but a desire to bring more of those third-party games that maybe you didn't get as a Nintendo player because they were on the HD Twins, they were on Xbox or PS5. They'll be brought over to the Nintendo Switch 2 to sell to that installed user base that just has a Nintendo system. So that, I think, will be a big reason to buy it. If you're somebody that's like, I can only really buy one thing, well, the Nintendo Switch 2, because I expect it to have a large installed user base, will attract a lot of those third-party developers to port their games over it. So yeah, I think it'll be worth it. Number 5, the Nintendo Switch Online Library. This is a very underrated component of the Nintendo Switch experience, but it is a massive catalog of classic games, many of which are worth buying on their own. They're amazing games. And Nintendo has developed great games for, at this point, like 40 years. So you get to play all of those. You have all of the NES games. You have the NES Classics catalog, SNES, which is, I think, probably the best generation for 2D games, and probably the highest percentage of good games exist on the SNES. You get a big selection of them with the Nintendo Switch online catalog system, not just first-party titles, but third-party titles from that era that are absolutely worth playing. RPGs, you get the whole thing. It's great. With the Switch 2, you'll also have access to GameCube games, and I think it's great for gamers who are maybe a little bit younger to be able to look back at that. I think it was the 6th generation of video game consoles, which was the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube, to be able to look back at some of those GameCube games and play them, because that is a phenomenal generation in terms of the quality of games that came out at that time. They were really, really fun. Not as graphically high fidelity as we got with later generations, but really fun and really great looking, great aesthetic value, great artistic value during that generation. So I expect that catalog to grow with time, and I think it'll be a great way to access GameCube games. Now, for me, I own a GameCube. I own GameCube games. I could play GameCube games on my Wii U in HD without having to worry about connecting my GameCube to a modern TV, or I can connect my GameCube to a CRT, which I have one. So it's not a huge draw for me, but I think for a lot of people who don't have a GameCube or didn't play those games, maybe didn't play games like Wind Waker, or don't have a Wii U to play the Wind Waker HD port, which is a great port, then this is going to be a great opportunity to dig into that game catalog. It's a fantastic game catalog. Very underrated. Number 6 is it's a managed experience. So this is a general argument for consoles versus PCs, is that you don't have to worry about video card drivers and all that kind of stuff. Nintendo manages your experience really well. It stays very streamlined. They manage all the updates. They do all of that stuff. So if you're a person that likes to not worry about any of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, then the Switch 2 is going to deliver that experience for you and continue to do so. So if you're comparing, say, the Switch 2 to the Steam Deck is a great managed experience for what it is, but it requires a lot more fiddling and finessing compared to a regular console where everything is kind of signed software for that for that system, you can expect a lot less headaches playing on a Nintendo Switch 2 versus playing on something like a Steam Deck. I love the Steam Deck. I like to fiddle with things. A lot of people are not interested in that. They want a console experience. Plug it in and it works. That's what they want. And the Nintendo Switch is going to manage that. Even with things like the dreaded game key cards, they will manage that experience for you. And I think for a lot of people, it just won't be that big a deal. Number 7, it's $450. This can be a good thing or a bad thing, but if you are comparing what you get for the Switch 2 to other options in gaming for $450, I think it's actually a very good buy. You are getting a dock that connects to a TV, so that's a physical item. You're getting Joy-Cons that detach. You're getting all the hardware that will produce the games for you. The hardware that goes into that and the quality for what you're getting is, I think, pretty reasonable for $450, especially when you're comparing it to something like the Steam Deck, and it's, the Nintendo Switch 2 is newer, or you're comparing it to something like a PS5. Now, the PS5, I believe, is graphically going to be better, but it's not a portable system. So you just don't have the option of picking up the Nintendo Switch and going somewhere, picking up the PS5 and going somewhere with it. The Nintendo Switch 2 will have that option. So I think for $450, it's pretty good, especially when you consider it like a phone or something. How much do you guys spend on a phone? Like a flagship phone is $1,000 now. That's a really big investment. This is half of that to get something that is bigger and will last for 8 years, not just a couple of years before it becomes obsolete, but you're going to get potentially 8 years. We've gotten close to 8 years worth of value out of the Nintendo Switch. So you're going to get that out of the Switch too. You're going to get a long life of value out of the hardware. So for $450 investment to get access to 7 or 8 years worth of games, I actually think that that's fairly cheap access to games, even compared to something like the PS5, not to mention the PS5 Pro, right? The Pro version of the console, which is hundreds of dollars more expensive and doesn't really get you access to any more games. It runs PS5 games better than the original PS5, but it doesn't get you more games. Whereas the whole point of buying a console or buying any piece of hardware is to get access to the games. So for $450, it's still one of the cheapest ways to access games on the market is the Nintendo Switch 2, as far as its introductory retail price. And for $500, you can get the Mario Kart game that goes with it, which is going to be a huge system seller, I expect. Mario Kart 8 is one of like the best-selling games of all time. It's a great game. I have it on the Wii U. I never bought it on the Nintendo Switch. So it'll be good to have a new Mario Kart game for people who are interested in that. Number 8, better storage media. Now, this is one that some people have complained that the storage media is more expensive. It's a better version of an SD card. But again, with time, I think the value will present itself better as time goes on. And that is because phones will start using these cards. The price will drop quite a bit for the amount of storage that you can buy with those cards as time goes on. So I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. However, you will get the benefit of the faster storage media as time goes on as well. And that will be more valuable, I think, than the fact that the cards are a little bit more expensive because they're newer technology right now. We had the same thing with micro SD cards before. When the Nintendo Switch was released, people were using like 16 gigabyte cards, which were pretty small because SD cards were still fairly expensive compared to maybe other options, but they get cheaper and cheaper as time goes on. We've witnessed this several times. It's still much better than what Sony did, say, with the PS Vita or like the PSP, where they had the proprietary memory. It's not proprietary. You're going to see it in phones. You're going to see it in other things as well. And so I think that will be a benefit to have that faster storage. Number 9, the hardware race is dead. And I will explain this a little bit, that there's been less of a generational leap as time has gone on. So the PS2 to the PS3 was a huge leap. The PS1 to the PS2 was a massive leap, incredible, in terms of the increase in fidelity and quality of games. The PS3 to the PS4, not as much of a leap as the PS2 to the PS3. And the PS4 to the PS5, really casual gamers are like, I don't see the difference. Now, for anyone who's a real gamer, you could really tell the difference, but you have to think about the casual person. It's like it looks the same. They're not used to picking up things like higher frame rate or looking for the details and fidelity. So the PS5 is better than the PS4 for sure. It's a lot more powerful, but that hasn't yielded a lot more noticeable fidelity with each generational leap. Now, the reason that that's good with the Nintendo Switch 2 is that the reports right now that I've seen is that the Nintendo Switch 2 is roughly offering a PS4 quality gaming experience. Yeah, the PS4 came out in 2013, but did the PS5 blow the PS4 out of the water in terms of its quality? No. And if you're playing on a handheld screen, you're not playing in 4K anyway, right? So for a handheld system to be able to generate PS4 quality graphics or PS4 Pro quality graphics, potentially as things are optimized and things, that's actually really good. I think for most people, they're not going to care that much. If they're just buying one console, they're not going to care that much about the difference between the PS5 and the Nintendo Switch 2 in terms of fidelity, because the option to take it on the go, you're just not going to see the difference that much when you're playing it in a handheld. And I think that's also why why Valve made the Steam Deck only 720p, is that the truth is when it's a smaller screen, that increase in fidelity is not as noticeable. Now, they did make the screen bigger for the Switch 2, and it is going to be at 1080p. But even if the game's not running at 1080, because it's a smaller screen, you may not notice like any kind of loss of fidelity. So because of that, the Nintendo Switch 2, even if it's not as graphically powerful as the big home console systems, which no one expected it to be, it's not going to matter that much, because there wasn't that big of a difference between the Series X and the Xbox One, or especially the Xbox One X, PS5 and the PS4 Pro, right? There's not as big of a difference in terms of what we're seeing on the screen, and certainly not in the beauty of the games. So the artistic direction of the games will still come through without ray tracing and all that other kind of stuff enabled. So that is actually a big seller for the Nintendo Switch 2, is that for most people, it's just not going to matter that much that it's not just as high fidelity as the PS5. The last one, number 10, if you're going to buy one eventually, you might as well buy one now. Here's why. I think it's always better if you have the money. Obviously, not everyone has the money, but if you have the money saved for this and it's disposable income and you're going to buy it eventually, you might as well buy it early in the lifespan of the hardware. And that's because you get the full value of it that way. You get 8 years worth of software. You get the option to buy the games on that system for the next 8 years instead of being obligated to buy them maybe on the Nintendo Switch, right? Or to buy them on some other platform that's older. You get the option to take them on the go for that entire duration of the hardware's lifespan. So in general, I think it's better to buy game systems earlier in their lifespan so you get the full access. You have the full option to buy everything, especially since retailers tend to not drop the price too much over time. I know there's a meme of like, here's a $100 GameCube from like 2003. That was because they were trying to, unload GameCubes in getting ready for the next system. And we're not likely to see the Nintendo Switch drop, or the Switch 2 drop a whole lot in price. Same thing with the other consoles. So it's good to buy one now. That way you have the option to play whatever Nintendo Switch 2 games come out, not the obligation to play them. And if a game comes out, maybe cross-gen game, Switch 2, Switch 1, you have the option of buying the Switch 2 version and enjoying the full fidelity, the higher fidelity experience for that entire duration. And one last little thing about buying a console earlier in the lifespan is that if you are into, say, hacking your consoles and unleashing their full power, well, the earlier consoles historically have always been easier to do it on because there's hardware revisions and there's firmware updates which make it harder to break the security on the system, hack the system, install unsigned software, that kind of thing. So if you have the first release version of the Nintendo Switch, that one can be hacked, but other ones, it's not quite so easy. So if you're buying the earliest version of the hardware, it's going to have the security vulnerabilities in it that you may want to use if you want to hack the system to install additional software on it. So that's an idea that I'm throwing out there. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. Nintendo has been very, big on stopping people from doing that, but it is an option that a lot of people will think about when it comes to like, what generation of PS3 do you own? Because it changes maybe how you're going to hack it, or what generation of PS4, those sorts of things. So it's just an extra thing to think about if that's something you're into. Otherwise, I think it's more just buy it earlier so you have the option to play the games if you know you're going to buy it. If you're already like, I'm never buying a Nintendo and I don't care about the Nintendo games, then yeah, it's okay to not buy it. But a lot of these reasons probably didn't apply to you anyway. So leave me your thoughts down below. Please keep the comments simple. Remember, I am a simpleton. My IQ is very low, and I won't understand what you're saying unless you use like short sentences, no compound sentences. If you read my books, people will agree that, I've never write complex things. So keep it simple for Simple Sam, and I will see you all next time. Have a great day, and don't forget to check out the books. They're on Amazon, and you can join my mailing list, dvspress.com/list, or find me at Patreon linked down below. Have a great one, and I'll look forward to reading what things you have to say about me. You feel free to call me an idiot. Later.